How do you make comics without all the frustration, without feeling lousy and inadequate all the time? Join me, Jess Rolifson,
and me, Tom Hart,
on the Terrible Anvil. Each week, we build community and shift our mindset about what it means to make comics and art. We're working through the whole process, one piece at a time, turning our suffering and angst into fun and glee. Join us at sawcomics.org. Yay! It's the Terrible Anvil. It's the last episode of the season. Apparently, we're gonna have multiple seasons, so if you're a little sad, that's okay, but don't be too sad. I'm your host, Jess Rolifson, and this is my slightly late co-host. Tom Hart is on his way. The surprise is he's coming here to my physical location just outside of Boston, but he's coming from Rhode Island, and as usual, the trains are misbehaving a little bit. So that's exciting. That'll happen soon. He'll come in like a sitcom. We'll just show up and be like, whoa. So maybe we can angle the camera if you're watching the video on YouTube later. We'll see him walk in just like they do in the movies. Very excited to be here. I can't believe it's the last episode. 20 feels like a lot. Ooh, it looks like Tom's logging in via his phone. So that's exciting. I don't know when or how to say this, but I bought a banjo a couple days ago, and it's very funny that we were sort of flinging around ideas for like, what should the last episode be about? And there's a phrase we used in the graphic novel intensive at SAW a little while ago called "sell the piano," and it was kind of directed at students that the way that course is structured, it's self-directed, which is a blessing and a curse because I can do what I want. I'm an artist, but on the downside. You have to be self-directed and your mileage may vary, as they say on the internet. So Tom's phone disappeared, so he's coming in and out. He'll be here soon. He's sending me emoji. I'll join on my phone. So I got a text. Yeah, so sell the piano is kind of a joke where it just means can you hone your focus in and take out a few creative distractions. On the other hand, we're always looking for balance in our life. So how do you keep your piano on your piano? Could you briefly part ways with it and then bring it back? I don't know. And then I felt like I was even less of an authority than I might be because I just got a banjo. So I'm like, man, what do I know? Sell the piano and get a banjo is the tagline of this podcast. So some of the earlier episodes of The Terrible Anvil were interested in kind of just surviving all the weird feelings that might arise as you embark on trying to be a cartoonist. And a lot of that there was overlap with keeping going, like keep making stuff. How do you do that? So this episode is also concerned with keeping going forever. I don't know how long we have, but like forever. So when you're a beginning cartoonist, the hardest part sometimes is starting, or I can start and stop and start and stop. But the idea of like creating art across several years or several decades or a lifetime is not really the way we frame our practice, or really how we do a lot of things, except for maybe, I don't know, jobs or marriages or something you're like hoping you don't have to keep changing a lot because longevity is something that's celebrated in those arenas. So yeah, longevity, but sustainability, and it feels like an overused word, but appropriate here. How do you keep going and keep going and keep going and then do it some more? And to where it's fun and something you might want to do. The other thing is Allison Kent, one of our SAW students and members or community members, had a really good note about procrastination, because that's also a part of keeping going. It's like, how do you, let me see if I can find the way she phrased it, because it was really good. It was like, how do you put your butt in the chair so that the magic happens? Which is really, I want to find it because I like the way that it was phrased. I have it over here. Da, 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 da. I probably paraphrased it kind of okay, but so Allison says, I'm gonna catch the recording, but the key question I have is how do you make sure to get your butt in the chair? Tom is here. The door is locked though. Hang on a second. Yeah. I was gonna like
Is there a
angle.
podcast?
Yes, I was gonna put the here's the camera.
Oh my God. Wait, I don't see anything.
Wait, yeah, where are we? Can you see Tom? Tom is here.
Made it. Oh, okay.
Yay.
Wait, so has it started?
Yeah, we're starting. I've already started. How rude of you to interrupt I can't believe you're late. Tom is the weakest link today, so I have to, usually it's, oh, look at this, I'm so excited.
Hey, where are we?
We're here.
We're together.
We're in the same
Okay.
square. I remember one of our students, Sally and Susan did this. They live in California and one of them had visited the other and they just showed up on a Zoom call unannounced with both in the same square. And I was like, oh, they're together.
But that's a great, sorry, you're really close to
Yeah.
getting the screen, or maybe we pull back. But so what are you talking about? Are you talking about keeping creative practice alive?
Yeah, how to keep going forever.
But that's a great example, right? Because two friends meet up in the same square.
It's more fun, definitely more fun.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we want to talk about community and things like that. So I'm not used to your Zoom setup. It's a little strange. Did I interrupt anything?
I can't remember what I was talking about.
I'm here to give Jess Rollifson a copy of Fumin #0, which I promised would be ready by today, which is today.
It's the fall. So you can see it on screen, and if you're listening, here's the paper sound it's making. It's real, it's in my hand. Wow, how many pages is this?
Well, 24.
Some of these pages are blank.
Well, they're back
They're back to back. Wow, how'd you make this?
Well, drawing and printing. But the thing is that I had a deadline and I had an accountability partner. I knew, way back when we started, I said I quit comics and I'm doing music.
This was like a few months ago, but you said that for a little while, right?
Can you believe this podcast is 20 episodes?
20 episodes old?
That means it's almost 6 months. But back then I was a retired cartoonist.
You were retired. So you've come out of retirement? Is this the big reveal in episode 20?
Yeah. But slowly, because of the Terrible Anvil and because of all the things we've discussed, but especially the sort of like, things about accountability and keeping the fires lit and sort of not worrying too much and all of that stuff. I forgot what we've talked about. Less about color, because there's no color in that.
Color didn't motivate you to do this.
No, but because there was other, there was so much encouragement coming from the radio dial or whatever we call the podcast app. I think it's called a podcast app. And because I knew you were waiting for it and I knew I had a deadline, which was our last episode, 5/31, May 31st.
Here we are, the last day of May. I can't believe it.
I put aside a bunch of responsibilities yesterday and I finished this. So thank you, Jess, and thank you everybody else. And I will put a PDF in the show notes and things like that. And this is,
Boomin' 2024. I'm so excited.
So what else are we talking about?
Well, I was trying to talk about selling the piano and how it's kind of how did I do that? Sort of a what was that?
Book.
Oh, that's fine. That's a rental. That's a library book. Sounds wow, we have all these good sounds for our recording. Chaos in here. What were we talking about? We were asking ourselves what we were talking about. I was like, what does sell the piano mean? I don't know if it'll even make it into our our verbiage about the podcast itself, but it is something that we were talking about in the graphic novel intensive about if you have a lot of interest or children or responsibilities. And when he's like, I put away all my responsibilities yesterday, I'm picturing Tom just like setting his daughter on a shelf somewhere and just like, I'll be right back. Like, I don't know. It's hard to balance stuff. So how do you want to do that? When and how to maybe balance? Maybe we're not the best people to give life advice since
no, we're okay.
We're okay.
Yeah, no, we're okay.
We do it. We do it. Yeah, we can tell you how we do it.
It's not advice if it's just storytelling, right? So we can just talk about
I can tell you what happened when I tried to attempt such things, right? I don't know if we've actually sold the piano. And I was telling the audience that I just bought a banjo a few days ago. So
the opposite.
Yeah, so I was like, maybe I'm not the best authority already. And then like I just did the opposite of what I said.
Yeah.
That's a good illustration. I'm keeping my banjo.
I'm keeping my piano, but I think finding the balance is great and actually letting them feed off each other. I finished this last night. Let's make the sound again. It's just paper. I finished that last night and I was reading it on the train this morning to show you, to deliver it in person. And I was reading it and I was remembering what it feels like to make a song, which is what I did last year, and there were parts in this book that I was rereading. I was like, that's a moment that echoes this songwriting that I enjoyed so much. And there were times when I was songwriting and I was thinking like, oh, this echoes the storytelling that I do, that I like so much. And I just think that those echoes and allowing some overlap and some reverberations, I think it's really beautiful. And you should allow it. And uh, I've never had another art form to fall back on ever. So if we're just going to talk right now about art forms and like allowing yourself another one to play around in and feel a little fearless and carefree about, you should definitely allow it.
Yeah, and then also like art forms, maybe it's not just art forms like my art is my serious thing and music I do for fun on the side. Like I think there can be different levels of validity or then seriousness depending on what you do it and why you do it or who's it for or whatever. But there's also things like making dinner or taking like cleaning your desk. I don't know, I do it. My house gets really clean when I'm not making art because either I just finished a project and I'm relieved, or I'm procrastinating. I'm terrified of the thing I'm supposed to be doing. So I think like building a life in art, you can't help but encounter the other things you're doing. But something that I feel like my husband and I take turns on is like lamenting, man, I wish I didn't have to go to work because I'd really rather do insert creative thing here, which is like a real lament, and it's part of being an artist, unfortunately. But I also wonder, like maybe there's a something in favor of the side gig or the 9 to 5 or the dishes in the sink that you have to wash today because they're starting to grow things. Like maybe it's okay to do stuff that isn't art or isn't
Yeah,
beautiful music making or I don't know.
it's all about being present, right? And all about, but and not worrying too much about the reward. You know, there's that old Buddhist phrase. I'll probably first of all, I'm sure I've offended everybody by saying there's an old Buddhist phrase. Second of all,
You should be like my old Buddhist friend once told me, and
yeah,
that sounds like
and then
less
and then
weird.
mangle
Was
it.
that
Yeah.
worse? I don't know.
But you know, it's like before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. And the idea is that your life doesn't change when when your mind has and when you're, but if your relationship to the present moment is changed, then everything becomes sort of even. So art is and life will become kind of the same. But I'm mangling it because there are lots of hardships that keep us from the thing that we think is important, right? Or the thing that is important, right? And sometimes we have an idea we need to get out. We have a story we need to tell. We have circumstances that we need to share or free ourselves from, right? If it's a trauma-based story or something. Yeah. And it is hard to negotiate setting your, you know, finding the time, setting up a life where you can tend to those things. But again, I think in the spirit of the Terrible Anvil, I'm all for small wins.
Yeah, and this feels like a big. If this is small, this is on the big end of small. This is like the food you get down south on a plate versus like Manhattan entrees. This is a lot of content.
It's not
for a small win.
But no, but it's a month's worth of work, and like some of the pages have one panel on it. But the great thing about that, if we're going to sort of if we're going to sort of pivot to that, is hitting that deadline taught me more about what the idea is and what the project is and about myself than worrying about hitting the deadline and not hitting it, right? You know, when you have all these ideas, and again, I'm talking about fiction, it's different with you with a client, and nonfiction, it's different with somebody who has a very personal story that they want to tell. All of those are going to be different. But for me, I've been sort of interested in myth, and I've been interested in sort of the sort of creative ideas that come out of the subconscious and things like that. And it's, for me, it was way easier to like kind of rush through something rather than tend in a precious way to a bunch of ideas.
I think that's somewhat true even in freelance stuff as well, especially for me, because like if I'm doing something on my own, I generally don't give myself a deadline for whatever reason. I'm just more curious about it. And then once the work starts happening, I'm like, oh, okay. So I pick like a day or a time of day and try to show up regularly and make stuff. And then if it starts getting to be something that I have to promise for other people, I need a day that's due, which is often like how freelancing works. So of course, when I collaborate with other people, oh my God, it was so terrifying last week. I missed my deadline by not very much, a day or something. Well, I don't know, maybe a week, somewhere between a day and a week, depending on who you ask. If you're asking me, I said it wasn't very bad, but the art director sent me an email and she's like, so today's the deadline. We're not going to make that, are we? Question mark, smiley face. She was really nice about it.
Note the
Yeah.
second person plural.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
I was like, well, yeah, really far behind. I mean, we were in communication, but things just weren't going very fast. And then, and I very likely procrastinated too and didn't give myself enough time. But the way that it worked out, there's two different deadlines. There's a digital deadline and a print deadline. So the only negative is that the digital version is going to appear after the print version, but we're still able to do it. But from the time of saying like, I don't think we're gonna make today's deadline, and this is how much time you have, it was a week, and I was like, oh my god. And then of course I always whine about this stuff to my partner. I'll go up to him, I'm like, oh, I have to do this thing, and he's like, what? Well, you better get started. It's like, I was like, man, they give you all this time to work on the script, and I have to, man. And well, it's because like she's accountable to other people, so it's like a accountability tree even. So you have layers of accountability. Like she was being very generous by sending me a smiley face in the email, but I don't know who she has to deal with, and I don't think there's nice
faces.
yeah, and she was nice to me, but I don't know if like her collaborators on the other end have all the patience. So and the reason why the print is coming out before the digital is because like they have to stake out space. So it would be really weird to be like, oh, by the way, that's not running. Like, and then they'll just have these two
based on the newspaper.
Yeah, in the physical newspaper. Yeah. So they can't just run blank paper. So you really do literally have to deliver. Digital can be like slightly more flexible, and it's still coming out really close to when the print's coming out. So the print is coming out this Sunday, and then the digital is coming out Monday. But yeah, so accountability and deadlines do make it happen. And while I was doing it, I was just like, I really hope I get this done. That became like the only thing I was concerned about. But I had like a plan in place, and I still felt good about it. And the drawing was going okay. And when it first started, all those things were true except for the drawing wasn't going well at all. There were like things I didn't understand, like stairs and like people on the floor. And I was like, none of this is going to be in perspective. I just have to make sure it looks right. So so once I got out of the weeds and it was just people kind of talking, I was like, I could kind of handle that a little bit. But what a ride. So I don't have a physical thing to give Tom until Sunday. I'll have to go to Providence and wag a paper at him. But I finished it. But anyway, an anvil of terrible deadlines was certainly afoot this past week. And we both survived.
Nice. Yeah. And I want to, since it sort of came up, I want to give a shout out to people who are struggling with a lot of life issues that keep them from some project. And again, mention the small wins and the small sort of efforts. And in finishing this project, there was a time where there was a real lack of structure in not only there's no structure in the book whatsoever, but I mean a structure in time or structure in process. And I think that can help you get there too. Meaning, like for a while, I was just like, oh, I'd pull out a random sketchbook, which I have like all over the house. And then I doodle some more. And so I was getting a little bit done, but it didn't feel like I was getting a little bit done.
Because you didn't have a plan or?
Kind of, or I didn't have a container, It just felt like I was leaving litter around the house, which I kind of was. So for me, and again, I've resisted digital for so long, but for me, so I turned this iPad into a bit of a
You did this all digital?
It's all digital, yeah.
I mean, that's like a nib. That's amazing. I was like, wow, your nib work is getting really fluid. Amazing.
Oh, thanks. Oh my God. But yeah, so I got at the iPad and I said, okay, this is the place where this project will move forward, right? And so I still will doodle a little bit in the sketchbook, and I did on the train a little too. But now I know to make it go forward in the project, I turned it into the iPad, but then I got to get it in the right folder, and I have to have some, and all of this stuff, that's all designed not to get the project done, but to make me feel like it's moving forward. And I think those are the little wins, because when you're like, oh, I got another panel done, or I got another couple panels done, and it's in the right space, and it can be sort of in the pipeline, in the pipeline.
It feels way more possible when you start to see an accumulation in an order that you were kind of envisioning. You're like, oh, cool. So we're on the road and it's happening. Yeah, that was true. The comic I made for the Boston Globe I think it's 43 panels, and for the vertical scrolling format for mobile and desktop, I just made these. They're essentially they're panels, and they're vertical, but they're all stuck together. So if you have 43 of those in a row and it's one long file, it's impossible to look at. So I broke it off into random pieces. I used to do it like kind of regimented, like 6 panels per piece. So it was this long skinny file. So I could only see sections at a time, but they were kind of arranged this time in scenes. So sometimes there'd be 4 panels or 6 panels, but somewhere in there. And I think there were 8 sections. So every time I finished a section, if it was going really, really slow for the first 2 sections, I was like, oh no. But by the time it started hitting a stride and just dumping those finished files in the upload folder, I was like, I finished another section. It started to feel like the small win, but it went really slow. I hate speed. Like I just wish I whine all the time about how slow I am. And I could be slower, I guess, but like it could always be worse. But I'm like, man, I wish it was faster because I spent all this time and it just looks okay. And I'm like, what am I doing? Why is this taking forever? And I use Photoshop, but I don't know what I'm doing. So it's also why it takes forever. I'm like, someone better, capable, more talented should be doing this. But here I am, and this is what I'm doing. So I'm the person doing it. So here, you gotta do the thing and let it be done the way you're doing it.
So what do you mean you use Photoshop and you're bad at it? Or what parts are in Photoshop?
I'm not someone who you would follow on YouTube for like advice on how to do cool things in Photoshop. Who even uses Photoshop anymore? Everyone's using Procreate. Even Tom's using Procreate.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so
But do you mean you're coloring in Photoshop?
So
or are you drawing in Photoshop?
I do my thumbnails very horribly in the margins, really small of this, and on margins of the script that's on paper, printer paper, pencil. If I'm feeling fancy and I have more time, I'll make a slightly fancier drawing, but still pretty small on paper. And then I take a picture with my phone, not even using a scanner, and I take that file and then I ink and color on top of it and lay out the digital text based on my own font that's handwriting. So almost everything's done in Photoshop. So it's like tinkering where the balloons go and drawing the balloons in Photoshop and coloring it and doing the ink and trying to draw hands over and over. And be like, nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it.
So what part is slow for you?
All of it is so slow. I just like in my head, I'm like, oh cool, this won't take very long. And then other times if I don't really envision a speed and I do it, sometimes I'm surprised how fast it goes. Not super fast, but faster than I
If you don't envision a speed?
Yeah, if I'm not like or mandating like this has to be done at this speed to be valid, or so I won't feel bad or whatever. I mean, the deadline is real. It has to get done at a certain speed. But yeah, sometimes I'm like, man, if I was smarter, more intelligent, more good looking, this comic would be going better. It would go faster. Like I would just be like, man, I'm so awesome. And sometimes making stuff, you're just like, you're just like, why won't this work? You click on the wrong thing, or you don't know what layer you're on, and you're in the wrong layer, and you're like, son of a, like, I've been using Photoshop for a while, and I still am like, always in the wrong layer. It's like if you live in Manhattan and you go on the subway or any place with a train, bless Tom, he just took the subway, and you go the wrong direction, and you're like,
Oh,
come on, you're like, why did I do that?
I'm on the wrong layer.
Yeah, so just little tiny things like that over a series of hours and days where you're like, you just kind of waterboard yourself. It's just like, damn it. But it is funny. So my partner's learning guitar and he's in the other room strumming these chords and it sounds good, thank God. And but he's learning, and every once in a while I hear him say, I think I'm a natural, which is so good. Because they can't disagree. I was like, it doesn't sound bad, and I'm like, you've been on YouTube and you've been playing guitar for 2 hours total, and it sounds like music and songs, so that's good. But what was my point in that story? Like that there is beginner speed, right? Like you have to let yourself be as awkward or whatever's coming out. If it's coming out, that's the good thing. Yes, we wish it was fancier or you knew things that you don't know, but it's not to say that the game is over and you'll never know those things. Like I have gotten better, but it's way easier to focus on what we aren't doing the way we wish we would, versus like what you've accomplished or the progress. Sometimes we have a physical object and we're like, this is proof that I did some stuff and it feels freaking good. But the reason why I brought up the guitar is like now day 2 or 3 of playing guitar in the other room I hear him go like like this like kind of Muppet noise, like they'll strum and it's the wrong note and I go, ah. And I was like, oh, I forgot I do that because I basically have to relearn how to play the banjo on a different scale neck because they bought a short scale banjo. And I already didn't know very much to begin with, but I was like, oh, I remember that noise I used to make. Do you make that noise when you like hit the wrong note? Or you go, ah.
I definitely do something. It's interesting because I don't know how much this relates to your partner or to you or to anybody in the audience, but I think it will relate to some people. When I get frustrated, a certain kind of frustration based on my expectations of myself, my dad's voice comes out of me. And it's not the voice he used on me, it's the voice he used on himself, mostly when he was bowling.
Wow, I just had so many feelings when Tom was telling me this story. I was like, oh no, oh.
And I might have to curse because it's a bunch of curse words, but I think to demonstrate it needs to come out. But so yeah, so like my dad was a pretty good bowler, but never super great. And like when he'd F up, and you know it as a bowler, you know it instantly. As soon as you release the ball, you know. And you go, Jesus fucking Christ.
And then you have
say
to watch in
Yeah,
slow motion
totally.
your mistake rolling away from you
Totally.
out of your hand.
Totally.
Wow, this is such a good metaphor.
And it's all your fault.
What a thrill.
And so, but it's really interesting because like, as I said, I gave up comics to do songwriting. And for a long time, songwriting didn't have any of that in there. There was just like play and goof and like sounds together. And let words mean little or a lot. It didn't matter, but slowly towards sort of the end of that, not really at the end, but whatever. So later, I started to have expectations, and I wouldn't be like ding ding ding. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ, you know. And
your bowling dad would come out.
Yeah, and whenever that happened, I took a break immediately.
Maybe you just have a recording that's called Bowling Dad. It's just you swearing and banging on the keys.
And
like nerd metal.
So, but that's what I'm trying to avoid with this new comic, you know, is I'm trying to just like let good things happen and not have too many expectations and let myself go from sort of like one joyous idea and drawing to another, even though they're dark and sad, they usually are, but like I'm trying to let them be not filled with my expectations first. When they're filled with my expectations first, that's when the grouchy, you know, that Muppet noise you're making. And I'm not ready to work through those moments yet. Maybe some point, right? But right now I'm just sort of celebrating the wins. There's enough we say this all the time, there's enough to feel bad in the world without, you just sort of like piling on to yourself and making yourself feel bad, feel even worse, you know. So give yourself the joy of knowing that like a small win is a small win. But again, like going back to Photoshop and all that stuff, like a little bit of structure will help you, structure in your process will help you really make progress. That
like
feels
numbering
right.
your files. You're like, ooh, file 4.
It is such a disaster because I haven't figured that out on the iPad yet. And I'm like, why is this?
like, where is this stuff?
Why is this B prep 1, ready next,
Oh, I love seeing submissions for the anthologies like that are sort of not vetted, but like people will get small groups of critique, like students together, like, hey, can you look at this really fast? And the file is always titled like final, and like getting more capitalized. Like, so you have to differentiate what version you're on. And it's like, no, really, this is the final one. So
those are, yeah, I mean, that's definitely me. So anyway, don't sell the banjo.
Don't sell the banjo.
Don't sell the piano.
Live for the ritual. And like maybe if it's interesting, Tom, you said like some of the stuff that I'm writing about or making art about is like big bummer, but the making of the thing is a joy too.
Yeah.
And that feels like you're kind of reclaiming or recycling or tilling the earth or something good is happening there where you're like, well, that sucked, but I like drawing about it or this is interesting or now I have something to write about. I don't know. Anytime my husband and I are like in traffic, we're like, this is the worst thing ever. And then later at home, we're like, maybe we should write a comic about that. That was sort of funny. But when it's happening, you're like, this I can't believe this is happening, but I hate it.
Yeah, well, right, so like, I'm talking about joy, and you mentioned it too, and so that's like one feeling that comes out when you're working and things are going well. But another thing, again, I want to acknowledge not everybody is like in this joyful place with the project they want to tell. And a graphic novel group is starting tomorrow, actually. And we have a lot
Yay!
of yay. We have a lot of people.
Jim is gonna be there.
Oh, awesome. Right. Number 2 or 3 for Jim.
It's
3.
at least 2,
Yeah.
but he wasn't there last year, so he made like a sandwich of, yeah.
And but a lot of people are working through some pretty heavy stuff and telling some serious stories. So it's not necessarily joy, but it is maybe a processing or releasing or even a healing. Go ahead.
I feel weird as like a mentor in the soft space because I'm always in the comments going, yay, and someone's like posted some like really messed up content. Like the story itself is just like heartbreaking, but I'm like, yeah, you did it. And I'm like, I get that, like, yeah, we should acknowledge that too. But like I'm like beyond thrilled when people, I can see the progress and they're hitting the goals that they want to make. I'm like, I saw that, but I'm also like, I should probably acknowledge that that's sad too.
Yeah. But again, I really want to say the small goals or the small wins, small goals and small wins. Lower your expectations. Yes. That was episode, I don't know, 5 or something, or 8 or something.
Yeah. So how do you deal with the bowling dad voice when you're making stuff so that you want to keep making stuff? Because I think part of my deal with procrastination and or retiring from comics and not making music, just laying around, I guess, like is because I am like, oh, I don't like that I'm so slow, or I don't like this about my process and there's nothing I can do to change it. Once I actually sit down and make it, it's never as worse as the feeling that I have when I'm not making it, where I'm like, oh, that's going to be really bad. It's never as bad as I think it's going to be. So, and when it is really bad, I'm like, see, I told you this was the worst. And that feels kind of good, like to whine about it to myself. But yeah, so do you have any advice for me or other people about conquering that moment when you're really frustrated? Like how do you kind of fly above those things? Because you said you're just celebrating the small wins. Is it like an active thing, or you just focus on something else?
Well, you said it's never as bad as you think it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
Well, so you need to
maybe I spoke too soon.
No, but you need to get over that resistance, and you need to have a friend to say, hey, Jess, are you drawing? Are you in your seat drawing? Because you're going to feel bad not doing it, and you're going to feel less bad doing it, but still you won't do it. So what's the deal? So you need somebody to say, just get in the seat.
Yeah. Well, and also sometimes that you could change. A lot of times when we're like, we have to get in the seat, like I have to draw the whole thing, or do like our expectations are always limiting us. Maybe not always, but oftentimes. For me personally, I think that's true. And then my husband will say, are you working on the comic? Because he wrote it, and just the editors and him waiting around for me to get my act together. And I'm like, no, I don't work on it. I was tired, or I'm sad. I don't want to. And he's like, what if you work on it for an hour? Just an hour. And like, so he takes away, like, I have to get this many panels done, or I have to finish this, or I have to, oh my God, there's so much work in front of me. Like, he says, just work on it for an hour without an agenda. And I feel like that's really good advice that I sometimes take. Usually because I have to, and there's like no way out. But yeah, I wonder if it's completely self-directed. What if you don't have an accountability partner and it's just you in your chair? Are there tricks, or do you have to call in other people?
Yeah, if I were to honestly look back at my life, I don't think there was ever a time I did it all alone.
This is related to Allison asking about procrastination. How do you get your butt in the chair to make the magic happen? Is the paraphrase I used earlier before Tom got here. And then, so this is kind of hopefully speaking to that question. My procrastination has to do with like my fear and resistance to the process itself, because I don't feel like I'm doing it the way I wish I did. And I'm sure I procrastinate just because I'm lazy. Like, I would prefer to lie down than to sit upright, and I don't know. Thinking about drawing makes me want to stretch my back.
And you've broken the spell with your partner's accountability. It sounds like a little bit, right? So like you can have an accountability partner, but if you live with them and all this stuff, sometimes you're like, yeah. You treat them like you treat yourself, and you're like, yeah.
I know what I could get away with. I'm sort of like a toddler where I'm like, I bet I don't have to listen to you. But on the other hand, if I saw that all the way through and I was like, I don't have to listen to you or anybody, it would be really awkward if I blew all my deadlines and I didn't deliver that comic, and I'm living with the person that wrote it, and he was like, bro, like, no. Like, I don't want it to negatively impact like one of the most positive relationships I have in my life. So I'm like, let's not. So there's a line for sure. There's a line. Like centuries later in divorce court. Why are you here? It's like, I just can't handle her. Yeah, she never finished these comics, and I wrote them, and they were really good. And she's a bum. So don't do that. We don't want to do that.
But
as you were saying, Tom,
well, I think I would.
if you don't have an accountability partner,
Get
but you
one.
say you always have,
Yeah,
there's
get one.
always
No,
one.
yeah, no.
You can get one without telling them that they're an accountability partner. Because I didn't no one asked Tom for this. Like, I didn't say, Tom, I have to have this.
I sort of slipped it in the last couple episodes.
But it
I
was
like,
Tom's idea. I never once said, like, Tom, you have to get that to me. Because I'm not
Well.
a scary person. I'm not very motivating.
Okay, well, okay, so it's true. I might be easily motivated by a non-scary accountability partner.
But I
right?
also like that you give me more credit than I feel like I deserve, where you're like, I have to get this to Jess. I was like, oh, that's so nice.
All right,
Like,
clearly I'm gonna have
thank
to
you.
find another accountability partner for the next issue. But
Terrible Anvil is gonna have like a completely different person on Big Tom and someone else who's like just is a terrible accountability partner. Well, I will say, well, this is a good example. We record this podcast, whether I'm nauseous or have a headache or
Yeah.
whatever, we always show up at the time we say we're going to, because there's at least 4 people that show up to the Zoom call. Usually Jim, thank you, and Meg, I think we pay her to be here, we pay them to be here. I don't know, like the accountability can also, there can be bribes involved.
oh, totally. Oh, that's definitely not outside my, you know, I haven't gone that far yet, because luckily I haven't run out of friends yet. But when I start running out of friends, I'll start paying
Yes,
people.
and I don't know how many like friendless people are listening to the podcast, but you probably have more friends than you think you do, and you do have resources, right?
Totally. And that's what, I mean, here's the part where we talk about SAW. That's what SAW is for. And we've created so many bonds there, and people are finding each other there. I literally have lost count, although it's probably 5 or 6, maybe 7 self-contained meeting groups that happened without us, of SAW people in the SAW network, that is mostly for drawing together.
Oh, yeah, so they get on a Zoom call,
Right.
and maybe they talk and maybe they don't, depends on the group, chatter or no chatter, or like chatter at the beginning and then quiet work time. But just you get
Yeah,
on
Sunday one.
and you see other people working, and then you want to work. And
Right.
Tom, did you want to talk about body doubling
I do, in a minute.
and capitalism?
I do, in a
It's
minute.
almost time.
Yeah, it's usually a quarter of, right? And then we
Yeah,
started
it's 11:45,
5 minutes late.
flagging it.
But yeah, and there's the Tuesday one, which is text only, and there's no sound in that one. Yeah, all of these are great ways to be
So you can
accountable.
have accountability even with like near strangers, is what we're saying, and like,
That's totally common these days, and there are websites for it. I forget what it's called. Adrian, who's one of our star students, knows about those websites, and I don't know. But all of those are timed, by the way, related to what you were saying about, like, do I worry about finishing X number of pages today, or do I just make sure I work for 30 minutes today?
Or that, oh, Sunday is Sunday Open Studios SOS, and it's at this time in my time zone, and I'm gonna go.
Right.
I'm gonna work on this thing.
Right. Yeah, so okay. So there is a term for that. It's called, which you told me you hate these modern terms, but on Zoom, people call it body doubling, right? So and I've done it, I don't think I've done it with a stranger, but I've definitely done it with some SAW people. But I do it frequently with friends of mine.
In person?
No,
online?
No, online. Mostly because, and I was mentioning this to the Kids Comics Unite people, that I'm of the age where I'm sort of getting in touch with people I knew 20, 30 years ago, and like sometimes like the best way to get in touch is to say, like, hey, do you like are you falling behind in your projects? Do you want to just like meet once every couple of weeks and write or draw for an hour? And so that's actually found a few people that's worked with.
Was that happening also with your music too? Like
no, I do that solo. Although,
but you do share it some of the time with
it's all
certain
uploaded.
people.
I usually upload it and then I like wait, and then there's crickets. And
But wasn't there like a
1%.
group you were part of
Yeah, I'm still in that group.
Okay.
Yeah, so that started really late in the game though, and that's an accountability group, and it's every 2 weeks. You get a prompt, and then 2 weeks later you have to come up with a song, and that's great. I haven't found a great rhythm with that group yet. it's okay. I usually upload, but because it's new, I haven't found like the people that I'm most respond to, and the people that I sort frankly want to impress. You know, sometimes you
Yeah,
want to impress people and you want to impress your friends or you want to impress somebody, and then you're like, if I get this done by Saturday, they're going to be impressed, you know?
totally.
But it's not like I'm trying to impress the world. I'm not trying to, you know, you're not trying to win a Nobel Prize. You're just trying to win favor with somebody who's already friendly with you know?
Mhm.
And
Or
it's
might
kinda
even
nice.
have a common interest. I
Yeah.
feel like when I go to church, if no one's in there, I'm like, oh, maybe I should leave or something. But if there's like four other people, I'm like, yeah, let's go. Or like, and I wouldn't like, it would be weird to go there by myself, and it would be a different experience. Like, it's nice to have other people in the room. You weren't here yet, and I was like, da, 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 da. And I was like, man. So we normally have we don't, well, now we have one screen with two people in it, but before it was just one screen with one person. And prior to this call, the final call of this season, I guess, we would each be zooming in from separate locations, and there would be two squares. So I got really accustomed for the last 19 episodes of saying like Tom is in his square and I'm in my square. So when I didn't know what to say, I could just look at Tom's face, and he would probably start talking. So I'm like, oh, it's fine.
True.
When it was just me, just seeing my own face, like taking up most of my laptop, I was like, wow, this is different energy. Like I had stuff to say and I could do it, but it's so much nicer with another person. Like
Yeah.
there's a little bit of body doubling on the Terrible Anvil, I think.
Right, totally. I were you working in those first 5 minutes when I wasn't there? Were you like, I hope this 5 minutes impresses Tom? You know, there could have been some
Oh,
of
I
that.
don't know. I think, well, Jim was here. I like to deliver quality
Okay,
content.
good.
I don't know, like, I don't know. Well, yeah, I guess I have some standards. Man, I really maybe I should. Tom's like, wow, you're not a very good accountability partner. And I'm like, I don't have standards or
Yeah.
deadlines. I'm like, I guess it's good to have those things.
There's different kinds, right? There can be the stern accountability partners. There can also be the like, whatever, you didn't hit the deadline, it's okay. Like, I don't know.
I also wonder if there's like forms of accountability partners that are like almost like being a regular, like maybe not at a bar necessarily, because a
Yeah.
lot of us are recovering, but
Mhm.
like what do you always see the same guy at the gym or the same person at the grocery store, and you develop a rapport, even if it's just like a knowing chin nod, like what's up, even though you don't know that person's name, but you could totally recognize them in a lineup or something.
The
Like
chin nod.
becoming a regular is also like maybe like a softer version of body doubling, where there's not an agenda, there's not a deadline, you don't have a prompt or an assignment. We do have groups like that on SAW that are very prompt driven, and there's a lot of joy that comes out of there. But yeah, it could just be something that happens organically too, that maybe you don't have a plan and you're like, I don't really have a lot of friends, and you just keep showing up to the same places. Then all of a sudden you realize one day you wake up, these people are all helping me do my thing.
It's true, that happens at SAW too. I talk with, you know, some of the other community leaders there. You know, I think of Michael as one of the community leaders, and sometimes we just talk about the regulars. You know, we talk about who's showing up with what kind of work they've been doing, and it's great to feel like you're part of that. You
Yeah.
know,
I also feel like they'll, not to talk about how awesome Salt is, but I guess it's not that weird since
Right.
Tom and I both like that place and happen to work there. But like the regulars also, it's not like a snooty regular where if you
No.
like walked in, the record screeches to a halt and like who's the new person? So you can be a new regular. It could be your first time, but you will be a regular soon. So yeah, I feel like our group of regulars are not gatekeepers in the least, and that could be intimidating a lot of people who start a new practice like music or something. My partner and I went to the music store, which I was thinking about. I was like, why are music stores always so intimidating? Or like a GameStop. I always thought the video game store was sort of intimidating when I was like a teenager, because I didn't really play video games, but I would go with my guy friends. Or the comic book store that was like very superhero heavy, and partially mostly D&D gear. Like I would go in there and feel a little intimidated because I just didn't know the lore, I didn't know anything. So being able to walk into a space that has regulars and not knowing anything and have those regulars be like, oh, hey, nice to see you, is very cool. And it also happens with the person at the music store. Shout out to John at Symphony Music in Dartmouth, Massachusetts. What a doll. And I was like, do you have a card? He's like, I don't get a card. And he like wrote his name on the back of someone else's business card. It was like the best ever.
John doesn't give a card.
John doesn't get a card, but he's got a card in my heart. And I'm definitely going to call him and bother him and ask him how to help to tune this banjo.
It's one thing we're working on at SAW is to make it really welcoming for the newcomer. And it's not, it's people, the people there are welcoming, but some of the, because it's software and because it's a computer, some of the systems are a bit like, whoa, how's this work? It's like walking into a bar and there's like lights going on everywhere and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a
ding,
very,
ding, ding, and dong,
very
dong, dong.
dark bar.
Well, with it's overstimulating.
Yeah.
So I mentioned to Jess earlier, there's the CNN article from just a couple days ago. Let's put it there. What did it say?
CNN.
The benefits of body doubling when you have ADHD, according to experts. And I have nothing on face, no problem with this concept or even most of the article, really, because it's a true thing and it's exactly what we're talking about. And frankly, most everyone I know has a quote ADHD, I think.
It may also even be helpful for people who don't identify as having
well,
ADHD.
right, whether or not you identify with it. But I think most of the, well, when I read you this next paragraph, you'll be like, that's everybody. So there's a paragraph though. So this is the capitalism part, because this article takes a lot of things for granted. It says,
are you gonna start using your bowling dad voice?
Well, just to show you the sort of general tone, which is fine, I think. Body doubling can help with pretty much any task you're having a hard time getting done, whether that's work, chores, exercise, schoolwork, or paperwork. The other person doesn't have to be doing the same thing as you unless the activity you need bodily doubling for, such as exercising, requires that assistance, et cetera, et cetera.
Quietly laughing in the corner because they're just picturing me doing any task. And then in the corner somewhere, my cat is like basking in the sun. And I know that's not precisely what they're thinking when they're writing this, but I was like, my cat's sort of my body double because like I can't live without a cat in my house, just like silently rooting me on by doing nothing.
Does it work?
I don't know. I'll be like really freaking out about something and look over and my cat is like DGAF and like just like belly up and her legs are everywhere. And I'm like, you know
that's
what?
great.
It's wonderful.
I mean,
it's so
look,
good.
we're talking, I think we're talking though.
I'm like, I'm here freaking out and she's here and she's not freaking out. So maybe I could be here and not freak out.
I mean, I think we're talking about being social creatures and we utterly are. There are very few of us who can exist without some form of social contact, and having a cat counts, you know, having a cat, or I mean, dogs obviously even more so, but having a cat to say, hang in there, or whatever, you know, cats say.
Yeah, my cat's not going to tell me how to better work Photoshop, but she can tell me how to chill.
So, what was the one that bothered me?
Yes.
I
want to hear you like roast this
much.
CNN health article.
I'm gonna find it because I saved it in the photos.
We bring you the irritating content, so you don't have to find it yourself.
So in this article, it just.
Oh yeah, you did a screenshot and
I did.
highlighted it. Okay.
It says, if people with ADHD have no intrinsic interest in a task, they typically struggle with a lack of internal motivation to complete it, or even to get started. Body doubling provides that motivation. But
did AI write this article?
No, but if you have no intrinsic interest in a task, you shouldn't be doing it. That is unfair.
Well, what about
who
taxes?
assigned you that?
Well, actually, my accountant is my body double. I just give her the info and I'm like, good luck, Godspeed, thank you. Here's $250.
No, I'm going to complain about capitalism in society. We've set up our society in so many ways that you can just utter a statement that like with no commentary that you might have no intrinsic interest in a task you're doing. Like that's terrible. We should not be doing tasks that we have no intrinsic interest in. That doesn't mean we have to be obsessed with it.
No, that's fair.
Super excited about it.
I think capitalism assumes that you have to do a lot of things you don't want to do.
Right.
And I think sometimes that influences us to treat other things we enjoy like a chore. Like it always happens that when I'm like frustrated with an art project, I'm like, oh, I don't like this. Like, I think some of that comes from this like, man, my job sucks and I don't like this. And not that we're all negative all the time, but we are accustomed to getting stuck in traffic and yelling at the sky. I don't know if that's a good, I don't know if that's a human, I think that's a human response to capitalism, not necessarily like a human thing,
I
but
personally think so. Like, because I think you can create a society where where you do things and don't hate that you're doing them. You
yeah,
know? Chores have to get done and they can be pleasurable.
yeah.
I mean, you keep mentioning traffic, which maybe is the thing
Did I
that is
tell you the card that I wrote to my husband for our like second anniversary?
Mm-mm.
It was almost all about how bad the traffic is in Boston.
What?
And I was like, what have I done? Like I like, oh, I waited too long, and it was like the night before our anniversary, and he was at work. I was like, okay, I have a minute to write this, and I'm gonna write on both sides. I'm gonna be really romantic, and I'll write really small. And I just started ranting. It wasn't immediate, but like 2/3 to the last half of it, we're just like, what the hell is wrong with people, and why do they drive this way, and why are we always stuck in traffic? But anyway, I wouldn't want to be stuck in traffic with anyone but you. That was the point. But oh my God, I was like, I have to never write about traffic in a romantic letter again. The traffic really is bad here. So, but yeah, tell me what you were thinking.
No, just that I want to try and create a world where people don't have to do tasks that they're completely disinterested in and not be coaxed into by seeing other people do them, you know. And
everybody else is doing it. You gotta
yeah,
make a comic. Peer pressure? Yeah.
I mean, I know we're all, we all have different temperaments too, right? So there are going to be people who come into a particular kind of, people who are good at cleaning and people who are bad at cleaning, for instance, or people who are good at building something.
And maybe
and
not
people
bad
are
at cleaning, you just don't have any intrinsic interest or
Well,
whatever.
that's
It's
sort of what I mean. It's
just
like,
uninterested.
you can probably, if it's about taking care of your space, you should be able to find some intrinsic interest. But if it's a job that is a miserable job, then we as a bigger world need to work to make those jobs less miserable.
Yeah.
And not rely on other forms of external ways to get them done. Or to force people who could be better, who could be living better lives, and force them to do these things. Anyway, I just hated that sentence.
Yeah, it's not great.
But we all have resistance, and we all struggle with doing the things we want to do, but doing the things we believe we want to do. And that's what the Terrible Anvil's been all about. It's like, just do something today, do something similar tomorrow, or repeat it tomorrow.
And maybe just worry about today if tomorrow sounds like a long way off.
Yeah,
like there's
forget
too
I said
much
anything
going
about
on.
tomorrow.
Yeah, forget I said anything. There will be a deadline eventually. Yeah. Yeah, it's just giving yourself a little bit of space and a little bit of time and a little less anger and bowling dad energy. And like, okay, we're here. Look over at your cat who is not worried about anything. The cat doesn't know that the pandemic happened and that the economy is collapsing. She's just enjoying this.
Or any of the wars.
Or yeah, I mean, we could really go on, but anyway, the cat is not concerned with any of that stuff. And not to say that you don't have to check out of society, though that's a great idea too. But my husband and I are always joking, like, let's drop out of society. How do we do that? I'm gonna go to work. Let's talk about it later. Yeah, it's tricky. Yeah, so I think there's levels of engagement. I think sometimes the world can get so crazy that it's the reflexes like, get it out. I'm frustrated and I don't want any of that. And sometimes that can go spill over to our art practice. Maybe do we even address how to sustain an art practice in a collapsing society?
Oh, maybe next season.
Maybe next season. You'll have to come back. Tune in. I will say, yeah, some of the hard things, some of the work we're making ourselves is really hard to talk about or to draw or to think about or to make. So there's that, and then the world itself is a hard place. The things you're dealing with, your rent increasing, or health problems, or you got a lot of responsibilities. These are things that like it's totally okay to be stressed out about, but you don't have to be defined by that stuff either. And like we're all kind of in the soup together. So it is really exciting if you can find a body double or someone else that's like, who knows what they have going on, but once a week you meet up You listen to the Terrible Anvil together or record it. Like make something together, sit with a friend, like sit with your cat, like whatever you have available that's like sustaining, do a little bit of that for yourself and for the world. And like that's not turning your back on the problems of the world. I think if you're making your patch of sunlight a little bit brighter, it makes the world better, for lack of that's like totally hippie stuff, but I think it's true. Like there are a lot of things I don't have control over, and trying to like hem in a little patch of joy, it seems like enough of a task that I'm like, I'm gonna worry about that and then see if I can handle any of the other stuff after that.
Joy or peace or safety or
Yeah,
whatever
something
you
good.
require. Yeah. All right. So there's no next episode. So we're finished here.
We did it. I can't believe it. Wow. But accountability wise, like, are we gonna have another season? And when are we gonna do it? Do we know?
Well, I think what we're talking about, right, is maybe a few episodes inside the graphic novel group, in which it'll only be for the graphic novel group, and we'll take some questions there. But they'll be public, and we'll continue that in some sort of version of season 2.
So the live version is for those students, but
in the graphic
the calls might be archived on the YouTube or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's somewhat partially exclusive at first, and then if you've been listening and you're like, I want to do that, but I don't necessarily feel ready for the graphic novel intensive, there's still an opportunity to listen if you want to.
I think that's what we'll do. But I mean, that's how we started this podcast.
And that's the graphic novel intensive is starting tomorrow, so maybe you won't have to wait very long.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't know. Well, you're busy through July or June and July, so maybe we'll start up again in August.
Yeah, so there might be a little bit.
But I worry that we've covered everything we need to cover.
I know. I'm like, what are we gonna do? Well, yeah, and maybe some of these things we don't have an answer to.
We've been watching Cosmos at our house, the Neil deGrasse Tyson version, and there's 3 seasons of it.
Wow.
And I never know what season we're watching, and I feel like there's so much repetition, and it's lovely. I really love that show, but I feel like, didn't we cover this in season 1? And it's just like covering it again, but just from a different angle, or like, didn't we talk about agriculture already? So season 2 might be like that, where we're like, here we go,
here we go again.
Bodybuilding again.
Yeah, we'll have to contemplate it. I'm sure that there were a lot of episodes that felt like there wasn't enough time, like to cover, like this one. I'm like, I actually don't really have any good advice except for like try to be kind to yourself if you want to keep going.
And find a group of people.
It's a marathon, not a sprint, as they say. Yeah. So yeah, like try to do the long haul. But it's way easier to do stuff if someone's in the room with you, and you really don't feel that sense that you're by yourself. So we could be the voice inside your head for another season.
Rattling around.
Yeah, hopefully we're a good voice in that. But bowling dad voice is also useful. Sometimes it's okay to have a negative voice. You won't be able to see this, and I don't think we're really great at yoga, but both Tom and I are wearing Converse, and that was not planned. I just keep looking down. I'm feeling very pleased. Yeah, we're shoe doubling. We each have 2 feet, and we're doubling them. But I remember putting on Converse shoes this morning thinking, I think Tom has a pair of Converse, and usually when I see him, he's wearing them, so I'm gonna wear them.
Oh, nice. Oh, great.
So
and celebrate each other.
Matchy body doubling.
And so but celebrating each other, that's another thing.
But we're not gonna high five with our feet because it's too complicated.
All right.
But pretend we did if you're just listening to this. Cling.
I can do it.
You want to try? Yeah. All right. Bing. All right.
Once more for the
nailed it. Yeah, can we? I have to keep my foot still because Tom has a very powerful leg. It's like I don't want to move. Do you ever try to land a high five and it doesn't work? We'll talk about that next season. Terrible Anvil.
All right. Thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you.
Meg, thanks for
tolerating our shenanigans. Transcribing.
Who's gonna hit that?
Oh, let me I have to save the chat I'm gonna do the recap, and yeah, we're doing things. It's happening.
Gotta hit leave.
Oh, we have to leave now?
Bye. Thanks everybody.
See you next time.
Thanks for joining us. This has been a production of the Sequential Artists Workshop, or SAW. You can find us on social media at Comics Workshop and online at sawcomics.org. You can hear about our many courses at learn.sawcomics.org. SAW is a nonprofit and supported by people like you. Learn how to make a tax-deductible donation at the donate page of sawcomics.org. You can join our free community of comics explorers at members.sawcomics.org. Thanks so much for being here.